Hey guys, welcome to the Two Vets Sports Show. This is Christian, and this is my boy Anthony over here.
What's up, guys?
All right, so we got a lot of news to cover today. So a lot of things happening this past week. We had the NFL divisional round playoffs. This coming weekend, we have the NFC and AFC championship. We'll be getting into that later in the show. A lot of stuff, moving parts. Some candidates for what do you call them? Yeah, coaches, all the end of the year awards. We have those finalists out. Then we have some coaching information, whether it's the offensive coordinators or, as of today, the Panthers have their new head coach. So, Anthony, you got anything to talk about right now in general?
Man, I'm happy that the Panthers got their direction, which way they want to go with things. Frank Reich kind of had ups and downs in Indy. That's your squad. That's your city. What's the feel out there for this as far as this hire goes?
Yep. So as of today, here at 2:00, we finally have our head coach is Frank Reich, the former Colts head coach for the past 5 years. He's had a very interesting 5 years. It's been interesting being under Jim Irsay for him. You can say Jim Irsay is controversial, or you can say he's an interesting owner or a bad owner. I mean, it just depends on who you ask. But yeah, I'm actually kind of happy. This is the first time in the almost 25 plus year existence of the Panthers since they were established in 1995. Fun fact, Frank Reich was the first quarterback for the Carolina Panthers and scored the very first touchdown for the Carolina Panthers. So that's kind of cool information. He's gone a long way. He was with Philly in the Super Bowl in 2018, was the offensive coordinator, then went on to get the job at the Colts. He did spend some time, I think, under the Chargers. He's produced Sirianni, who is currently right now the Phillies head coach and doing great. He also had Matt Eberflus, who's the Chicago Bears head coach. He was the defensive coordinator. He's got Gus Bradley as his defensive coordinator, but it's not confirmed if he's going to be following him to Carolina. So I'm very interested on who exactly is going to be following Frank here. He's coming into a very good situation, good roster. They need to figure out the quarterback position, and that is exactly why I think they hired him. Offensive minded, understands how to develop quarterbacks. He had Andrew Luck, then Andrew Luck surprisingly retired. Then he went on to have Jacoby Brissett for a little bit, and then was Peyton Manning's quarterback coach back in the thousands, I think it was. Who else? I'm sorry. Matt Ryan was his recent quarterback, but he also had Carson Wentz and Phillip Rivers.
Was he a fan favorite?
I wouldn't say he was a fan favorite, but as reports came out this week, we were all I think you could ask any Carolina Panthers fan. They were either on the Wilkes or the Shane Steichen. I can't figure out how to say his name. The offensive coordinator for the Philly for the Eagles, Shane Steichen. But apparently during that first interview, it didn't go so well. So that's the big thing. And I kind of have to give it to Tepper. I guess the reports came out finally and said that, hey, they want to have a head coach with experience. Wilkes does have experience. He did good with what he was given. He had not a fair shake in Arizona, but honestly, the way the team is rolling, it had to go offense. And like the Panthers have historically, this is the sixth head coach of the Carolina Panthers, and everyone before him has been defensive minded. So this is the first step in a new direction for Tepper. I think this is Tepper's right move after having Matt Rule there, and it's very questionable because the way he approached the head coaching search the last time, that was his first head coach, and tentatively, in past interim head coaches don't really work out. Not saying Wilkes wouldn't have worked out. I think he would have had a good opportunity. He probably would have won a divisional, but I don't think he would have, gone past that. But tentatively, in a new owner's second head coach, it usually goes pretty well. So we're going to hope that Carolina can turn this thing around, get the quarterback that they want. And you're not gonna like who I'm gonna suggest is gonna be the quarterback for the Panthers next year, because your boy that you wanted to DM today, CJ Stroud. They're gonna go after him.
Dude.
There's already reports about it. So
CJ won't make it past the second or third pick. But that's for a later date. So no more. The Panthers aren't interested in Vic anymore. Vic Fangio.
I think he's still definitely in the mix. I think Vic Fangio, Gus Bradley, a strong defensive coordinator who understands how to really take effect of the already core pieces that are there on the defense. Mind you, they do need help probably at the safety and their back end of their cornerback room, and maybe a more free-flying linebacker, but they have so much they can do, and I want to see what kind of defensive coordinator they can bring in here that will be able to really expand on that offense. They need to get another solidifying edge across Brian Burns, who they're going to extend this year. There's a lot to the Carolina Panthers this year, and they have the roster to do it.
So a report that I saw today out of Philly lets me know that one head coaching candidate is more than likely going to receive an offer from one of these teams for their head coaching spot. I did see today that the Eagles intend to pursue aggressively, is what the report said, Vic Fangio, which leads me to believe that Jonathan Gannon is going to receive, and we kind of thought that Gannon seems like Gannon, Ijaro, and D'Amico Ryans right now are like the three favorites from each team. From what I'm seeing, I think here in Houston, D'Amico's the fan favorite just because of his history with our organization. This is where he played his professional career. I would love to see D'Amico Ryans. I said earlier in one of our previous shows when we first got this thing started that I was a big Jonathan Gannon fan. At the time, D'Amico was not interested in the Texans head coaching vacancy. I think since then he's had a change of heart. He's had one interview with us. The Texans did complete a second interview with Mike Kafka as well. And to me, someone getting a second interview is a good sign. I mean, there wouldn't be a second interview if the first one didn't go well, So I think those three have to be the favorites right now for the Texans job. Gannon and D'Amico cannot be interviewed until after conference championship weekend. And I think actually Ijaro Ivero did get a second interview with the Texans as well.
As far as I'm tracking, Ijaro, Gannon, D'Amico, and
Kafka.
Kafka have gotten second interviews out here in the league. Dan Quinn has told Dallas he's going to return back to being the defensive coordinator. Obviously, that probably tells me that Denver was just not the right move. I think they're going in a different direction, going to go a little younger.
I'm really surprised that Ijaro is not the favorite in Denver. That blows my mind.
I don't know. It's very conflicting on Ijaro being there. I do want to kind of go back to the Panthers here really quick and just kind of go over some of the key things on Frank Reich right now, if you don't mind. So earlier, Frank Reich's not going to have his next presser he's not going to have the welcoming presser until Tuesday. So we're not going to really get to hear from him until Tuesday after the championship weekend. There is a report out there saying that he's looking at a more of a CEO type relationship, as reported by Mike Kay here, who works for the Charlotte Observer. I don't know how I feel about that one. I think that's something that isn't probably true. I think that's probably just kind of like pushing through the room. I'm sure he's going to want a lot of control of figuring out how to get the roster correctly and getting his coordinators out there. The coordinators are going to be announced later next week, probably as the week goes on after his conference. He might announce like maybe a guy or two. What was it else? What else was we looking at? Down here at the bottom, Frank Reich went 40-33-1 with five different week one starting quarterbacks in that time frame in Colts. It's very concerning, playing in the QB purgatory realm. What else? There's a couple of his former teammate, Steve Berline, congratulated him on Twitter. Panthers thought it would be weird for Steve Wilkes to be kept on staff, especially after he won the locker room this past season. So there's a reason why Steve Wilkes is not being retained. That's why we're looking for a defensive coordinator, and that's admirable. I think they're two strong-minded men. They wanted to be the head coach. They wanted to be the guy. But Wilkes is going to get attraction out there somewhere. Whoever has a defensive coordinator position open, or be a late candidate into these head coach positions now. I think that's a big thing. But he also has the lawsuit, which we'll cover here in a minute. I may have made this stuff a little too small for me to cover again.
You definitely think the Panthers go quarterback?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
100%.
With this, I was certain if it was going to be Wilkes, it was going to have to be a quarterback. But I think they would have not pushed. I think now, because it's Reich, they're going to push to get his guy.
Do you think Frank Reich will play a GM role as well?
That's where we talked about where the CEO thing is going to lie. And I don't want him to really do that, but I can understand why, because he was, I don't know who to blame, but I think more of Chris Ballard and Jim Irsay were to blame in the Colts organization. And Frank, basically, there's a reason. One of the reasons why Frank was let go is because he did not want to play Sam Ehlinger. And he wanted to keep Matt Ryan out there. I mean, Matt was just learning the system. This is his first year in the system, and he just wanted to kept running it. Granted, Matt's arm didn't look so great, throughout the season. So, he is a former MVP, so you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. Do you trust Matt Ryan or not? And apparently, Jim Irsay is just so quick and cutthroat. And it's proven he's been quick and cutthroat. Even though Carson Wentz had his best couple of seasons under Frank Reich, he had his best season in the Colts, 27 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, I think it was, 4,000 yards. When he was obviously in Philly playing under Frank Reich, he was playing almost at an MVP level until he got hurt, until you had to have Nick Foles come in at the end of the season and win them the Super Bowl. So there's a lot to tell here, is that Frank was getting the most out of his quarterbacks. And it was also seen that, he was sometimes in the past couple of seasons that he was a second half kind of guy, where he was getting his wins in the second half. So was it premature to let Frank go? I do believe so.
Was Frank Reich on anybody else's coaching radar as far as?
He was on offensive coordinators, and I think also for head coaching, he was in play in Arizona. He was an offensive coordinator candidate for the Jets.
They hired their offensive coordinator today.
Yes, they did. We'll get into that as well later here in a bit.
So what I don't want to see happen is I don't want to see the Texans and other teams kind of panic and be like, oh crap, the Panthers hired their head coach. Now we got to hurry up. And the Texans just go with Mike Kafka just because he's who's available right now, or any team for that matter. I want all these teams to kind of just take a deep breath, wait till the conference championships are over, get their second interviews in, and hire the guy that they feel is the right fit for their organization. I'm happy for the Panthers. I personally, I'm not a Panthers fan. I don't live out in the area, but I can tell you from Houston, it looks like a good hire just because of Frank's history with the organization. I think Frank Reich is somewhat of a quarterback whisperer. I think for a rookie quarterback coming in to the NFL, this is the perfect guy. This is the perfect guy. If you know, we're gonna go QB here in the first round. This is a perfect hire for the Carolina Panthers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I definitely agree.
That's the optics from Houston. That's what, as a unbiased third party, if you will. I think Frank Reich is a really, really good hire for the Panthers.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'm very curious. Like, I want to know if he's going to pull guys from Philly. He can pull guys from Indy. And then there's a couple other people across the league that he could pull from. And there's a list of free agents from the Colts that I would not mind, grabbing. Like, you have a guy like Eric Ebron, who was a tight end. We need a pass catching tight end, and Eric Ebron's out there, and now we got his coach. We got, Eric Ebron's coach, so we need to solidify that position. I think he'll take a team-friendly deal if he needs to.
So a head coach can only do so much if he's not allowed to lead the team, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is, in Indy, it kind of felt like he was on a leash a little bit. And
100%.
And to me, the front office, ownership, GM, VP, all that stuff, that's the operation side of the franchise. To me, what happens between those white lines, the owner and things like that. Now, if your coach isn't performing well, then sure, step in, you're fired, whatever you need to do as an owner. But in terms of personnel, who starts, who's backup, what play calls we make between the white lines, that's the coach. That's why you hired him. If Frank Reich says, no, I don't want to play Sam Ehlinger yet. I want to stick with Matt Ryan. He's the league MVP. He's proven he's a proven quarterback in this league. He's been to a Super Bowl. Then that should be Frank Reich's decision to make. Period. Mm-hmm. There's of course consulting his coordinators and stuff, but in terms of GMs and owners and things like that, trying to force him to make that decision, that to me isn't and I don't see that in Carolina.
Tepper's aggressive. Like, he's gonna tell it what it is, but for the most part, he kept his mouth shut. Like, I had to really think back these past couple of years here with Matt Rule. We've only heard from Tepper 4 times, and each one of those times has been from when somebody got hired or somebody when got fired. You don't really hear from Tepper. And the only time we only had a real issue when Tepper outspoke was when we were like, Teddy Bridgewater wasn't our guy. We knew that, but we assigned him to a bridge kind of contract, and we should have went and got a quarterback, but we didn't. We just stayed in QB purgatory the whole time, and that was, again, letting a college head coach come be an NFL coach. Too much power, and it just didn't work. So that's why having Tepper, he didn't really speak out like that. So it's nice that he sees the flaws in his ways, and now he's trying to fix those things.
I'm just not a big fan of publicly undermining your subordinate. So in terms of football, Frank Reich is a subordinate of the owner. And in this type of profession, I just feel like you let your coach control what goes on between the white lines. If you're unhappy with what he's doing, fire him. I mean, don't come out and be critical of your coach publicly. That kind of stuff needs to happen behind closed doors.
For sure.
Other than that, let your coach do his job. You as the owner do your job. The GM does his job. You don't see a coach doing the opposite. You know what I mean? So I think if there's discussions that need to be had, if the coach wants certain personnel, have that meeting with the GM behind closed doors. Don't be on the stand talking about, well, our GM, we don't have the right person, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Have those conversations behind closed doors. There doesn't need to be a Twitter war or publicly undermining other people within the organization, because at the end of the day, y'all have to work together until a time comes where, in this instance, Frank Reich was let go by the Colts. That is when you say, we weren't happy with the way things were going, blah, 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 blah. But while he is still actively your head coach, it's not any of the owner's business, in my opinion, to publicly undermine his coach.
Right. And Jim Irsay does have a tendency of running his mouth. He runs his Twitter. He says things on Twitter. He gives game updates on Twitter, who's inactive, who is active. He does do questionable things, and I wouldn't say he's worse than Jerry Jones, but he's close.
I think honestly, I think Jerry Jones might be the worst owner in the NFL. And the only reason that I say that is I like how enthusiastic Jerry Jones is about his football team, but sticking your hand in everything, your hand where it doesn't belong. Like I'm sorry, the Mike McCarthy, the head coach of the Cowboys. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care how long Jerry Jones has been around the game. Jerry Jones does not know more about football than Mike McCarthy. So what Jerry Jones needs to do is sit up in his box, enjoy the game, and let Mike McCarthy do what Mike McCarthy's going to do. And I say that I'm using the Cowboys as an example. That goes, to me, in my opinion, that goes for every team. You hired that head coach for what? To lead your team.
Right.
Let him lead your team.
You got to. And so here, I just came across this on Twitter. I just popped over to Twitter really quick. Will Kunkel, 4 hours ago, I kind of missed this earlier, but made a tweet earlier about Frank Reich separating himself late in the interview process. Basically, Reich conducted interviews with potential coaching staff members. He did not present the Panthers brass with a wish list, but with a group of names he had thoroughly interviewed prior to his interview if he got the job. So that's telling me that he's already hit up the guys who are going to be on staff and interviewed them. And I guess now Panther staff have to interview them as well, obviously, because, you got to have some communication. But if he's already vetted who he wants on the staff, and he's already went to Tepper, he went to Fitterer, he went to Dan Morgan, Samir Suleiman, all these guys, and said, hey, you hire me right now, I'm throwing a name out there, Gus Bradley, Vic Fangio, guys who are going to come in and be my defensive coordinators. Finding guys who are going to be offensive coordinators that you're not going to have to worry about getting poached. I wouldn't have to worry about that anymore now with the offensive coordinator issue. And that's a thing across the league right now, is another key factor of having an offensive-minded coach is now you don't have to worry about so much of the OCs getting plucked off because, well, he can call the plays if he really wants to. And now it's become a big thing right now in the league where these young offensive coordinators getting plucked everywhere. Just look at the list right now. Shane Steichen, Ben Johnson next year. Brian Robinson is going to be a guy in a year or two. You're going to see these names keep coming, and it's going to be everywhere.
Do you? Let me ask you this: do you think Lovie Smith is a favorite anywhere to get a DC position?
I think Lovie has a chance. Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Are you? Did you have more that you wanted to hit on with Frank Reich? Because
We
dive
can
into
just
Bill O'Brien.
hit up here on the last little bit of the Carolina Panthers wonderfulness here today. And this is just in regards to Steve Wilkes. So apparently, per Tom Pelissero reported today, and then Joe Person, one of the Panthers beat reporters, retweeted this, but he said, in Tom's report, giving every indication that Kellen Moore was the runner-up to Frank Reich for the Panthers job, not Steve Wilkes. That's a big yikes. So that's telling me that Kellen Moore impressed heavily, who stayed Monday and Tuesday this week to have a first interview and second interview following the second day. So that means telling me that he had a good plan as well. I wouldn't have fully trusted it because of Kellen Moore's crazy play we'll talk about later in the show. But to that, Steve Wilkes and his attorneys, as he has a lawsuit with Jim Caldwell, he has a lawsuit because of the Brian Flores incident, and then a couple other people who have joined in on that lawsuit. Basically, going, what's the word I'm looking for? Affecting the Rooney Rule and all the minority hires that are not happening because other people are getting jobs. So today they announced, we are shocked and disturbed that after the incredible job Coach Wilkes did as an interim coach, I do not disagree, including bringing the team back into the playoff contention and garnering the support of the players and fans, that he was passed over for the head coach position by David Tepper. There is a legitimate race problem in the NFL, and if we can assure that we have more to say in the coming days. So there's going to be more to this story. It's not over. I mean, Brian Flores is out here getting interviews. Jim Caldwell did interview with the Panthers. There is a couple more people, like I said earlier, on that list. So we'll see how this turns out for Steve Wilkes. I think he can definitely go get a defensive coordinator job in the NFL if he wants to. Head coaching, maybe, if he can get on these last couple little interviews if possible. Obviously, these teams are already on their second interview, so they're pretty much there on who they want to have. So, and covering the Panthers, that's pretty much it. So that's a big thing to watch here in the coming weeks. So, yeah. But up here we have the list of the dates, and currently it is January 26th. So we are coming up on the conference championship game. After the conference championship game, teams can go for second interviews with any coaches that are in the playoffs or who are now exiting their playoffs. So we'll see on who actually gets in there. Super Bowl will be on February the 12th, and then February 13th starts. What's it say? Second interviews with the assistant coaches and everybody like that. So a lot of stuff coming up with just hard dates and everything like that.
I think next week we'll probably see, if not all, majority of the head coaching vacancies filled.
There has to be, because you have like the Senior Bowl coming up. You have pro days. You have to get in the building, know who your staff is, get your scouting going, and know what you're looking for, what you want. Like, all that changes when you have changeover. You have to identify what you're looking for, and if you don't with your scouts and who's going to be there. I mean, obviously, some of these departments actually have really good scouting programs, but they're going to need to know what the coaches is actually looking for, and they don't know that until the coach gets there. So Panthers are now one step ahead compared to the rest. Hopefully Houston can get their guy. I hope that, D'Amico doesn't lose, but I mean, I think D'Amico or Johnson. I mean, you're gonna know who. That's a conundrum there itself. What if whoever loses first gets the job because they can interview between D'Amico and Gannon because they're going against each other this weekend?
I'm looking at this.
What's up?
So regardless, they can interview, even if they're in the Super Bowl.
Right, they can.
So,
but tentatively, they're not going to try to, like Kevin O'Connell last year interviewed with Minnesota, and he was in the Super Bowl. He just didn't take the job officially until after the Super Bowl, which is like after February 13th. So it is doable, it is foreseeable, but I would think that these teams don't want to push it that late.
Yeah, I think there's only two names that really make sense in Houston, and they both happen to be playing in the NFC Championship. So I guess we'll see if that matters. I'm excited to see who the Texans go with, but any candidate that they've given second interviews to or are waiting to give a second interview to, there's 4 names, and I'm good with all 4 of them. I think all 4 of those guys would be good hires.
Yeah, I think the rest of the hires are pretty known. I'm kind of just shocked that we are not going to see Dan Quinn, Sean Payton. Those guys are not. I don't think
Sean Payton's going to get a job.
He's not. But I will say, who is getting a job? The Broncos' former head coach as the offensive coordinator for the Jets. Jets have hired Nathaniel Hackett as the offensive coordinator. Robert Saleh is looking for that experience. And what's crazy about this one is Mike LaFleur was the previous head offensive coordinator. I hope I'm saying it's Mike. And it's one of the LaFleur boys.
Matt LaFleur.
Is it Matt LaFleur? Okay.
Yeah.
Matt LaFleur was under Nathaniel Hackett for a couple of years. And so basically now he's replacing his mentor, or the mentor is replacing the student in the Jets organization.
Yeah, I've heard that the Packers will not entertain trading Rodgers to any NFC team.
No, there was a report by Adam Schefter about that.
So this Jets thing might actually happen.
It makes sense. They have the draft capital. They have a young quarterback in the reins. If they can get Aaron Rodgers in there, teach him a few things, maybe make him competitive for the next 2-3 years, and then input Zach Wilson for a couple of years, I think you could see something.
Zach Wilson can still be a good quarterback.
He needs to grow up. He needs to grow up. He needs to figure it out because he's young. He hasn't had this type of job or anything like that. Zach Wilson needed to grow up, and I think there was reports out there that he needed to grow up, and nobody kind of listened to him. They kind of like shrugged him off. But it showed this year he needed to grow up.
Yeah,
and I think having Aaron Rodgers would be a good thing for him. I think maybe he can turn it around because Aaron's only going to play 2-3 years left. He's only got 2-3 years with the Jets. He's making $60 million if he takes the option. Like,
did we say that like 6 or 7 years ago about Tom Brady?
Sheesh, yeah, but Tom's a different breed. Tom's not Aaron. Yeah. But I think this is an interesting situation for the Jets. I think it's a good offensive coordinator. I think they're going to have a good time because they're going to have Breece Hall back next year, who was a stallion running this year, and sadly he got hurt. Nathaniel Hackett's main offense is a power run scheme. He didn't get to really do that with having Russell Wilson as his quarterback because Russell just improvises and just gets out of the pocket, makes things a little bit too ridiculous, I would say. And they didn't really do a power run scheme with that, which I think the Jets can definitely do with the good offensive line they have and just power the ball. I think they'll have a good opportunity.
If Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets, that the AFC East, in my opinion, instantly becomes the toughest division in football. And the reason I say that is because you've got the Bills are solidified. The Dolphins are an up and coming, with Tua at the helm. They're a strong
Pending Tua
franchise.
plays next year.
The Patriots, they've got Bill Belichick, they've got their quarterback. They're going to be contenders every year, and I think that if Rodgers goes to the Jets, he instantly makes them a playoff contender. I think they've got good pieces in place, and Rodgers going to the Jets instantly makes them maybe not to win the division, but definitely a playoff contender. And speaking of the AFC East,
we got Patriots news. They hired Bill O'Brien from Alabama. Derek is right now screaming "Roll Tide" in his Alabama voice.
Man. So here's my thoughts on that is, yes, Bill O'Brien was miserable in Houston. He torched our organization from the
we did more than that.
He destroyed it. From the top to the bottom. He gutted our organization. He gave up DeAndre Hopkins for a bag of chips. He gave up our draft capital. I get all that. But go look at Alabama this year. Alabama was the 10th ranked overall offense in the country and the 3rd ranked scoring offense. And we talked about this on one of our previous shows. And it shows not only with the Bill O'Brien hire, even look at Nathaniel Hackett. Some guys just aren't cut out to be head coaches, and that's okay. I think this is a really good hire for the Patriots. I think Bill O'Brien is a bright offensive mind. So long as he's not given any control in terms of what happens at the operational personnel level of that franchise, I think this is a really good hire for the Patriots.
And I think it's a good idea for Mac Jones to be reunited with him. Granted, it was a brief time for Bill O'Brien and Mac Jones. I think he can definitely help him out. I'm not saying Bill O'Brien is a quarterback whisperer, but he does know offenses. So the Patriots struggled this year with Matt Patricia as an offensive coordinator who is known for being a defensive guy. I don't understand what Bill Belichick was doing with what he was doing with Matt Patricia as an offensive coordinator. Maybe because he had the head coaching experience, maybe he thought he could figure it out, but obviously that wasn't the case. So now you got to, go back to the old Bill O'Brien guy and bring him back. So
I think
it's a good idea.
People will see what Bill O'Brien did in Houston and say, they're gonna have issues with this hire. The problem in Houston was that Bill O'Brien was given GM powers, personnel powers, head coach, offensive coordinator. I mean, he was all of it. He wore many hats. It was terrible. As far as an offensive mind, if Bill O'Brien's given the right personnel group, this is going to work out well for New England.
I think they need to attack a wide receiver. Keep striking at wide receiver. They need to find somebody who can be a guy. I mean, they have an opportunity. I think they're one of the head teams to get DeAndre Hopkins if he becomes available during free agency and when they can start trading. That's going to be a very interesting team to watch with what kind of acquisitions that Bill Belichick wants to go get. And Bill Belichick is still the guy, but I think they're he's only got a couple more years, but I think they're starting to groom either who they're going to find who's going to be the head coach to replace Bill. I think it's Jared Mayo, but we'll get into that at a different point in time. But having Bill O'Brien there is going to help them out a lot. Next up here we have the finalists for the year for all the awards. For the NFL MVP, we have Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes. We have Philly quarterback Jalen Hurts. Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson. Bills quarterback Josh Allen. And the Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow.
This is going to be Patrick Mahomes.
It's got to be Patrick Mahomes.
Point blank, period.
Agree that it's Patrick Mahomes.
Point blank. There's no.
The way he
I love seeing Justin Jefferson on there. I do. Justin Jefferson is a difference maker.
Mm-hmm.
I love seeing Justin Jefferson on there, but Patrick Mahomes is something else, dude. It's going to be Pat.
Yep. The AP Comeback Player of the Year.
This one's easy too.
Yeah, it's between the Seahawks, Geno Smith, Saquon Barkley of the Giants, and Christian McCaffrey of the 49ers.
Geno.
It's Geno. It has to be Geno.
Dude.
It has to be Geno.
He that team was supposed to go probably like 4-13, and he took them to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did.
I think there's no question here. It's Geno Smith.
Yep. I definitely agree with you. I think it has to be Geno. For the AP Defensive Player of the Year, we have 49ers Nick Bosa, the Cowboys Micah Parsons, and the Chiefs defensive tackle Chris Jones.
This one's going to hurt my feelings to say, but I'm going to go with Micah Parsons.
I think Micah has been an unstoppable force this year. And he's really starting to come into his own. I think if you give him another year or two, he's going to be consistent like Aaron Donald was with Defensive Player of the Year and J.J. Watt. He's going to have that kind of impact for the next couple of years. That's just my opinion. For the Rookie of the Year finalists, for the offensive side of the ball, we have 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy, the Jets wide receiver Garrett Wilson, and Seahawks running back Kenneth Walker. I had to go Kenneth Walker here, man. I wish Breece Hall was down there because of the Jets and how well he was playing earlier this year. I think Breece Hall would have been a guy in this list if he would have stayed healthy. But I would have to say Kenneth Walker. He was.
I don't think Brock Purdy's played enough. I like what he's doing in San Fran, but I got to go with Kenneth Walker.
But watch Brock Purdy win it because of how he's doing right now, running 6-0.
No, dude, I love what he's doing. I love the story. I just don't think he's played enough games. Mm-hmm. I don't even. I'm not trying to take away from what Brock Purdy has done, but I don't even really like him being on this list.
Yeah, I don't think I think he needed to play more of the year to be considered. In my own opinion, I think there was other offensive guys that probably should have been on this. For the defensive side of the ball, for the Rookie of the Year, you have Sauce Gardner, you have Aiden Hutchinson from Detroit, and Seahawks cornerback Tariq Woolen. And obviously, Sauce Gardner is with the Jets. I think we can both agree Sauce is the guy, or
Sauce Gardner and Aiden Hutchinson's a close second.
Yeah. I think Sauce has just been locked down. He was one of the top cornerbacks of the league. I mean, if not the top cornerback in the league, if only he's going to get better. I think Revis Island is back in the Jets with Sauce, but we'll see how it goes next year for him. Next up, we have the updated list for the Coach of the Year. The Coach of the Year finalists that were listed earlier today was the Giants head coach Brian Daboll, 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan, Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni, Bills head coach Sean McDermott, and Jaguars head coach Doug Peterson. Now, the final three that is listed as of right now, updated, is Brian Daboll, Kyle Shanahan, and Doug Peterson are the final three. What do you think? And remember, Coach of the Year is based on the regular season, not on the playoffs.
Doug Peterson.
I gotta say Kyle Shanahan.
Look, we talked about this. I brought this up earlier in one of our prior shows, and I said something along the lines of these guys, these coaches that win year in and year out, and they don't. It seems like they never get any attention when it comes to Coach of the Year, and I like that Kyle Shanahan's on this list, but given what Doug Peterson did, how he turned that organization around like that.
Granted, he was the head coach when it wasn't going so well, like when they were 1-4, wasn't it? When they started out 1-4, and then they turned it around, got to the playoffs. Which, bravo! Brian Daboll started out 6-1, and putted to the playoffs, which they provided a good playoff game. But I think when we talk about consistently being the coach of the year, it has to be Kyle. Because
I mean, I don't see how Nick Sirianni's not in the final three.
Yeah, that's questionable too. I think Nick should definitely.
I think I would have rather seen Nick Sirianni than Brian Daboll.
Yeah. Brian Daboll couldn't win against his own NFC East division. He had to win. He got into the playoffs based on getting into the wild card slot and beating every other team besides the NFC East. So that doesn't scream
this,
NFL Coach of the Year to me.
This last list is freaking probably the toughest one to choose from.
Yeah, this is going to be the hardest one here. But are we in agreement with Kyle Shanahan, or are you still saying Doug Peterson?
No, I'm gonna stick with Doug.
Okay, I'm gonna rock with Kyle. I think Kyle's got it. Don't get me wrong, though. I think the other two have done great, but did just give my gripe on Brian Daboll and why I don't think he should be one. Nick Sirianni should definitely been in the top three. Your top three here for the AP Assistant Coach of the Year finalist. No surprise. Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, who led the highest scoring offense for the Lions and made them relevant again, and carried their team pretty much all year, except against the Panthers. They lost. The 49ers defensive coordinator, D'Amico Ryans, who's been a hot name. Obviously, we talked about him multiple times on the show about being a head coach. He is there. And then also Eagles offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen. So that's a tough list. 2 of the 3 are going to be head coaches next year, or going to be head coaches later on this year.
And 3 would be. Let's make that clear.
3 would be. No, yeah. Ben Johnson would definitely be a head coach.
Yeah.
He probably would have been the head coach if it wasn't for him dropping out in Carolina.
Absolutely.
I 100% think that would have been true. I'm very conflicted. I think D'Amico.
That's who I was going to go with.
Is a heavy favorite for this. If not Shane Steichen, but I think what D'Amico's doing on that defensive side of the ball all year long has been outstanding. And like I've mentioned before, their secondary has not been good. Derek earlier said the Giants head coach seems like he thinks the Giants head coach should be the head coach of the year. And then now he's saying it's a Panther show tonight. I don't think it's a Panther show. I mean, it's the latest news, but we like to support our teams. Obviously, when the Texans get their head coach, it's probably going to be an all Houston show when it pops up. But for tonight, it's Carolina.
Probably not, because you guys have it right now. Y'all are the lone wolf. I think when the Texans hire their head coach, so will the Broncos, so will the Cardinals. I mean,
yeah, I can see that.
I mean, it's what's in the news today. It just so happened to be that the Panthers hired their head coach. So
yeah, if we would have done the show on Tuesday, we wouldn't be talking about this right now, like our normal show. Luckily, today's Thursday, so it's our second show of the week technically. But for that note, we didn't do a show on Tuesday because Anthony had some issues here in Houston. Hopefully,
We had
everybody's
some
okay. By the way,
bad weather. Bad
Very,
weather
very
hit Houston on Tuesday. I would like to take one moment. I meant to do this at the beginning of the show. Today is the 3-year anniversary of one of the saddest sports moments ever. Today is the 3-year anniversary that that NBA legend and Hall of Famer Kobe Bryant passed away. So just wanted to give a shout out to his family, and man, that was a sad day. But anyways, I won't carry on too long about that. We'll move on with the show, but sad day.
100% Kobe forever, because that man was a legend.
And
it was. I mean, me and the wife were. I can still remember where we were doing. We were at the store and we all checked our phones at the same time, and it said Kobe Bryant had passed away in a helicopter crash. And
I was like,
I think we stopped for a minute and just realized
the first site I saw it on was TMZ, and I was like, no.
First report on TMZ. I was like, no way, no. But it came true as minutes flew on. It became surreal, and that one of the greatest basketball players had passed away. And sports fans can relate, but Kobe had more of an impact outside of basketball, and he's definitely inspired generations of basketball players, not just because he's the second coming of Michael Jordan or whatever you want to say he is. He was Kobe. You knew who Kobe was. You could say it. You could say Mamba mentality. You could say everything else. But yeah. Rest in peace to him, and respect to his family and his daughter. But yeah, we're going to get into the picks and talk about last week's games here. If you guys noticed that we're kind of like going a little longer into the show today, like we said, we had to cover a lot. So last week during the NFL playoff divisional round playoffs, we had the Jags and the Chiefs pull it out. Chiefs won 27-20. Any thoughts on this game you want to talk about?
Man, like, props to the Jags, dude, because what a game that was. Patrick Mahomes is. I know he didn't have a stellar game, but I just never bet against never would bet against Patrick Mahomes, because he always seems to find a way to win regardless.
And he did it while having a high ankle sprain caused in the second quarter. He battled, I think it was actually done in the first quarter. Actually, I'm sorry. He got injured in the first quarter, and then proceeded to play out pretty much into the second. They had, I think, Chris Henne come in for a series, but after that, it was Patrick Mahomes just showing how much he wanted to win. And he obviously couldn't run, but he only took. It was insane to watch him do what he did against that defense. But we'll get further into that here as we go on. Yeah.
There's not much to say about the Eagles Giants game.
I hope the Jags play better next year. But if they started out so slow in this game, they just did not get the job done. So, and it goes to show it's close. And it was close only because of how Patrick was playing and because he was hurt and he wasn't able to utilize his legs. People don't understand. He doesn't utilize his legs that much. So him being stagnant back in the pocket, he's magical when he can just fling it, do what he needs to do.
There's not much to say about this Eagles game.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the Eagles Giants disappointed, I think, everybody just because of the previous week when they played immaculate, and then they walk in and think that they're gonna, hold up against the Eagles, and their defense just
And
showed that
they
they
very well
can't.
could have. I don't know. This was not good. This was not good.
Very questionable play calling. Brian Dayball just couldn't figure it out. Daniel Jones was getting picked off. Seemed like receivers were running wrong routes.
when you have a
Couple of those
high
plays,
powered offense like the Eagles, when you fall behind 28-0, you can hang it up.
they got behind in the rushing game. I mean, they couldn't get Saquon to go. Like, I thought they were going to be able to do it, but they kept putting the ball in Daniel's hands. I mean, and granted, Daniel's played really, really good all year. But when the rushing attack was not working, and then you had to make Daniel throw into holes, and his receivers were just running wrong routes and not getting it done, it's questionable. So next year they're going to have to hit up more of the wide receiver class, and they're going to have to revamp some of the stuff. But they'll be back next year. But they got some work to do. Next we got the Bengals and Bills. I think this is quite a shocker. I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a game. 27-10, Bengals win. Bengals just kind of just dominated the snow game. I love snow games. They're fun to watch. But Joe was able to fling it in the snow. Like, he was just able to control the line of scrimmage and have that rushing attack work. The Bills just couldn't do anything defensive wise.
Yeah, this was the Bengals dominated, man. I mean, plain and simple. I think I picked the Bengals. I think you picked the Bills. Regardless, I didn't have the Bengals winning like this. I think the Bengals kind of flexed their muscle last weekend and showed everybody that they're the real deal. The Bengals are the real deal, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, second year in a row in the AFC Championship, could be looking at second year, and they're going to have to get through Pat. They're going to have to go to Arrowhead, get through Patrick Mahomes and the nasty Chiefs, but they could be back-to-back years in the Super Bowl. If the Bengals make the Super Bowl this year, watch out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we'll get into that. We'll get into that in a minute.
Mm.
But we have the last game of the week, which I think is the most satisfying.
Very satisfying.
Against the Cowboys. But the 49ers and the Cowboys was a pretty much a defensive shootout. Dak Prescott played terrible.
He
Granted, Brock Purdy didn't play all the great like he's played in past weeks.
You know what he did though?
What do you do?
Took care of the football.
And
a lot of times that's what it boils down to, man. You give teams extra possessions, they're likely to make you pay for it, especially when you get to the divisional round of the playoffs. Teams are likely to take advantage of turnovers. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, and the 49ers definitely caused turnovers. So I think they had a strip sack and a couple of interceptions.
I think Dak threw 2 interceptions, right? Or was it one?
A couple of interceptions. So I think it was a very good job from both defensive sides.
I will say this. I've said it. You've heard me say it all season long. The Cowboys organization's loyalty to Dak Prescott kills them. And Zeke.
Mm-hmm.
Kills them.
And then you saw what happened when Tony Pollard went down, got hurt in the second quarter. And they had to start using Zeke in the middle of the field. They had to do everything with him there. And it just was not working. So you got a couple breakthroughs, but it wasn't very much.
You've got a guy who, in my opinion, is already one of the elite receivers in the NFL. one top 4 or 5 guys in the league in CeeDee Lamb. Imagine what you could do, what he could do if you got him a quarterback that could sling the ball. Like
Mhm.
I'm just not a big fan of Dak Prescott, man. I just think he's mediocre at best. I know I'm sitting here in my chair talking about Dak, and I'm when I say he's mediocre, I'm of course comparing him to quarterbacks around the league. In comparison to those guys, he's just a middle of the road quarterback, man. He's not elite. He's never going to get you to the promised land. It's time to move on from Dak Prescott.
Mhm. And what's crazy, they just signed him like what 2 years ago to that deal. I think it was like 2 years ago. But I don't really want to dwell anymore on the Cowboys. I want to focus on what's up next. And before we get,
I want to ask one more question.
okay, you can ask.
How many games did Dak Prescott play in this year? Was it 12?
I think less than that.
And he
He
threw
was out for like 7 or 8 games, I think, right?
the most interceptions in the league. That's a problem.
He did not play good this year, and people are going to say, "Oh, he was injured throughout the year." I'm like, you still had the most interceptions. Dallas and Jerry are going to figure this out. I wouldn't be surprised if like some of these quarterbacks coming up in the next 2 years, if Dallas gets rid of Dak, goes and gets a quarterback like a Drake May, Caleb Williams. I wouldn't be surprised. But again, it's Jerry Jones, and he's going to get his own way. But the fans have spoken of the Two Vet Sports Show. By the way, while I say that, make sure you are subscribing to our socials at Two Vet Sports Show and follow us on Twitter at Two Vets SS. That is Two Vets SS. So make sure you interact. Make sure you're tuning into the shows. But I put out a poll here on both the Facebook and Twitter, and on Facebook. I asked the question, who wins the NFC Championship? 60% said the 49ers and 40% said the Eagles. And then I asked the same question about the AFC Championship. 70% said the Bengals and 30% said the Chiefs. Now I took to Twitter and asked the same question. And what was it? I can't actually see the percentages. Oh no. Basically the Twitter said the Eagles will win the NFC Championship, and the Bengals will win the AFC Championship. So pretty consistent on the AFC Championship side that the fans have all said that the Bengals will win. Is a mixture for the 49ers and the Eagles as the matchup for the weekend. Nobody knows really who's going to win that one, but I think everybody's understanding that the Bengals might win. And that will lead us into the sporting bet odds for the weekend. The 49ers and the Eagles open with the 49ers with a minus 2.5. Correction, a plus 2.5. And the Bengals and Chiefs at a astounding +1 for the Bengals and the -1 for the Chiefs.
I think that -1's just here's your point. Here we're going to take a point from you because you're at home. I think these two teams are really close. This is pretty much a straight up pick, and I'm going to go with the Bengals.
For the AFC, I got the Bengals. I think the Bengals pull it out against the Chiefs. I don't know what's going to happen with Patrick, how his ankles are doing. Obviously, it's going to be a key factor.
And without a doubt, taking the over. Without a doubt, the over under 48. 100% guarantee it's going to go over.
Oh yeah, we didn't even get to the over unders on this one.
100%. This game's going over 48 points.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's going to go over it. I'll definitely take the over at 48. For the Eagles and 49ers, it's a little bit more difficult because they're two really good teams. But I think Brock Purdy kind of showed his last game and showed that, he can't beat really good defenses. And Eagles have a really, really good defense. So I think the Eagles are going to be able to find ways offensively to get past the 49ers. And I think that's why it's going to make the Eagles win this weekend. I think it's going to be Eagles-Bengals in the championship for the Super Bowl.
So at the beginning of the playoffs, I picked the Bengals and Niners to play in the Super Bowl. I'm going to stick with that here. I think this game's going to be really close. This is going to be a really good game. And I'm going to take the under on the point total because you're talking about two of the best defenses in the NFL.
I'm kind of wishing that they wouldn't have. I understand why they did the game at 6:20 for the Bengals and the Chiefs, but I'm wishing that they would have flip-flopped that one because I feel like the San Fran and the Eagles game is going to be more interesting compared to the Bengals and the Chiefs.
Yeah. Well, I think both of these games are going to be fairly close, but you're going to have the Niners and the Eagles are going to be in a defensive slugfest, and the Bengals and Chiefs are going to be in a shootout. And I think that, in my opinion, is probably why that's the later game. That's what fans want.
But are you taking the over/under on the Eagles and the 49ers?
Under.
So the over/under right now is 46.5.
Yeah,
they're going to take the under.
Yeah,
I think you're going to be right. I think they're two really good defenses, but I just think the Eagles are going to figure it out against the 49ers defense.
I'm thinking like this is going to be like a 23-20 type game. Like it's going to be close.
Yeah, it's going to be similar-esque to the 49ers Cowboys game.
The Bengals Chiefs could very well end up being 42-35 or something crazy.
But like I said, it's going to depend on Patrick and what he's able to do. I'm telling you, that ball's going to get distributed to Kelsey. By the way, did you see the guy last week who got that amazing bet done for all the first touchdowns? It was like four people who scored in the divisional round. I think one of them was Dallas Goedert, Travis Kelce, Jamar Chase, and who was the other guy? Oh no, there was somebody else that was a part of that bet, but he named all four scorers and got off of $5, won 72 grand. Jesus. Off a $5 parlay.
So, not to backtrack any, but I just saw this. Sean Payton has not received a second interview with anybody.
That's telling that teams don't want to give away their first round picks when they know they got to rebuild like that. And I think that's what I understand. The media can build around Sean Payton, but you could see that Colin Cowherd was his workhorse. You could see that people at Fox were his workhorse. Basically putting these things out so that he could trick these owners and make them think that, oh man, Sean's going to go interview with Carolina. I got to get him back into Denver or whatever it is. But if it's true, then not reported that he has not gotten any second interviews. I think that's telling because nobody wants to give the Saints a first round or two first round picks for Sean.
I don't think it's all of these teams that he was a candidate for are kind of either not really, maybe not all of them are in a rebuilding phase, but all of them need pieces to be contenders. And I just don't think that those teams are in a position where they can get rid of draft capital like that.
Especially when like most of these teams need a quarterback. Who needs a quarterback right now? Carolina, Texans, Colts. Oh, Denver doesn't need a quarterback. Who's the other team?
Arizona don't need a quarterback.
Arizona does not need a quarterback. But those top three teams that needed those guys, they're not going to give away their first round talent when you got Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, Hendon Hooker if you want to go a little later on, but like he's not a first round guy. The other four are first round guys. and you're not going to get rid of the opportunity. Oh, Las Vegas too. Las Vegas is going to need a quarterback. I mean, unless they go get Tom Brady, but
Tom
we'll
Brady.
figure that out as we get going.
But I still wouldn't mind seeing the Raiders take a quarterback.
I think they need to. I think Hendon Hooker would be a very possibility in the second round, like where Las Vegas goes back, gets a second round pick. I don't know if they have a second round pick or a third round pick, but Hendon Hooker there, or Tanner McKee, who's a 6'6", super pocket type of quarterback. And if they go get Tom Brady and let him sit behind him for a year, who's to say that's not a possibility? So Tanner McKee is a low key guy that people are going to look out for. He's got a big arm. He's tall. He's the classic quarterback that you want. You know, pocket kind of presence, accurate ability to do everything, but he's not mobile. He's not a guy who's going to run and create plays with RPOs or anything like that. So, yeah. Anything else that's happening currently in the sports world that we can cover?
Nothing new since we started. I think next week we'll get to we'll have a lot to talk about next week, man. We're gonna have a bunch. We'll know who's playing in the Super Bowl. We're gonna have a bunch of head coaching hires, probably a lot of assistant coaching hires. So you guys make sure y'all follow us so y'all can get updates on when we're going live and things like that, and follow our Twitter. We're always tweeting something. And next week, Tuesday and Thursday, we'll have a show, and
we might actually even get interactive.
We're gonna have a lot to cover next week.
I think we might get interactive next week. I think we might bring one of y'all on if y'all want to talk or anything like that. We can open up the discussion, because next week's going to be really fun. The next 2 weeks are going to be very much competing on who's going to be the Super Bowl champion this year. So there's a lot to talk about. We'll see. Me and Anthony will talk about that. I just want to get one little last tidbit. Frank Reich got a 4-year deal, which I just saw. 4-year deal from David Tepper. So I think that's a pretty good contract. Not too big. He didn't do anything ridiculous like he did with Matt Rule for a 7-year contract. So I'm happy with it. Other than that, make sure y'all like and follow the socials. Keep in contact with us. We'll definitely see if we can get some of y'all on the show. If anything, I think we're good to go.
Good night, guys.
All right. Good night, guys.